Hello, and welcome to the American Man Podcast. This is your 5 day look back. Today is Saturday, April 12th. So, I missed a week. Last week, my studio has been a little up and down based on some water damage from a ceiling. So, trying to get back into it. So, what happened the last couple of weeks? I mean, you really can't start anywhere other than the kind of the ups and downs in the trade war with Trump and his tariffs and the tariff policy and things like that. So, what is a tariff? Basic tariff explanation is when other countries bring things into our country, um, they have to pay a tax. So, a tariff is a tax on imports, things that are coming into the country. And I have some economics in my background, my education. I'm not an economist, but the basic idea is, if someone is manufacturing something, incredibly cheap in another country, and then they bring it here. It's harder for American companies to compete with that out of country good coming in. So we put tariffs on it for two reasons. The first is to raise revenue, and the second is a protectionism for U.S. businesses, American businesses. Trump's position this whole time has been, hey, these other countries have been putting tariffs on things that we export, so we should be putting tariffs on things that they import into our, that we import from them. And there's two kind of types of tariffs that have been enacted so far. The first is what we call a reciprocal tariff, and basically what that was saying, look, if you put a tariff on American goods, we're going to put a tariff on your goods in the same amount. So, just as an example, if France was taxing American goods at 10%, we were going to tax French goods at 10%. So that has been stayed, that's been paused, and the reasoning given was that some of these countries have reached out to us, and said, "Hey, we want to negotiate. Can we take a step back on this?" And then there are sort of retaliatory tariffs, or tariffs that are not meant to just be reciprocal, but actually inflict damage or prevent free trade with a particular country. And right now they're going back and forth with China. It started 100%, and then China raised their tariffs. Then we went to 104%, and then I forget if we're at 140%. Some crazy number that everyone's threatening each other with these tariffs. And a lot of people actually just even on the conservative side, the Republican Party, do disagree with Trump, because they are traditional free market, Reaganites, basically. Free market is better. Open trade brings better quality of life to everyone, because you can import things from other countries that manufacture them more efficiently. Some countries have more natural resources in particular things. And one of those, quote unquote, natural resources is manpower. And this is where I, diverge a little bit from the traditional Reaganite free market approach, because I don't feel that it is free trade if we are trading with a country that uses, either slave labor or child labor or, impoverished condition, working class labor. Right. So if we are trading with China and China is forcing their people to work at, small wages and things like that, I don't view that as free trade. I view the United States as, disadvantaged, for a morally correct reason, that we don't permit, child labor and slave labor and things like that. So I don't mind tariffs on those. Reciprocal tariffs I don't mind, because if they're taxing us, we can tax them. So I'm more okay with these tariffs. At the end of the day, I feel like we just need less cheap junk in our country. We don't need to be buying as much as we do. I've talked about consumerism before, maybe on my other podcast, but um, I just don't think we need so much stuff. So I hope that this actually gives people pause in what they're buying, how much they're buying, when they're buying it, where they're buying it from, that type of thing. I am not a protectionist. I don't think that we should only be building things in the United States, but there are certainly some things that I do think should be moved back here. Defense production. We saw how much the world was affected by COVID, and all of a sudden we couldn't buy the chips from. And this had nothing to do with COVID. There was a fire in a factory in Japan, and all of a sudden we couldn't buy the computer chips to manufacture all kinds of things, farm implements, vehicles, trucks. There was parking lots filled with trucks that couldn't run because they didn't have the right microchip. um, I don't think it's a bad idea to for public policy sake encourage businesses to return to the United States. I think that's great. So, we'll see where the tariffs go. Trump has already, kind of backed down on some of them. And at the end of the day, maybe this was all bluffing, right? Maybe this was him just, talking a big talk and then get people to the table, because he's done that in the past. So, whether that was a calculated move to, force negotiations, or whether he intended to go through with it, but then, is always willing to keep his, ears open for other possible solutions. I don't know, but that has certainly been the big news of the week. The other side of that, sort of interesting to watch the stock market, right? And this, everyone says the economy is good or bad based on the stock market. No, that only affects people who own stock and own mutual funds and are on the verge of retirement, and they've got retirement funds that are tied up in stocks and bonds and things like that. That's the only people that really affects. I know a lot of people who would love to be able to buy stocks and things like that, but they can't afford it because, right, the inflation, or the wages and things like that. So I think that unfortunately our news media lives and dies too much on the stock market, and those are easy numbers to show. Oh yeah, stock market's down 3,000 points, must be bad. Or Nasdaq is up 3%, that's great. It's easy sound bites, but I don't think it actually shows the actual health of our economy as accurately as people would like. And I think that this past couple of weeks is a perfect example of that. So what do I mean by that? Well, Microsoft didn't change its business. It didn't change its employees. It didn't change its CEO. It didn't change its product line. It didn't come out with a new line of software. It didn't have any flops. It didn't anything like that. Yet the price of Microsoft stock fluctuated wildly in the last week and a half or so, based on speculation. So we have created an economy that is not as concerned with the actual performance of these businesses, compared to the perceived future performance and the perceived stability of uncertainty of politics, of things like that. So it's no longer a reflection of the workforce of the company. It's a reflection of projections. And I think that's a scary place to be in. I feel like our economy should be measured and based on the actual performance. And so that's why I'm not so concerned about the recent dip and then back up and then down. It doesn't seem like any of it's actually based on the ability of these companies to do what they're doing and be good at it. It's based on just the back and forth policy. So that was, the kind of the big swing of the week was stock markets, tariffs. What's it going to do? Is it going to tank the market? Are we going to have a recession? All those things. I'm not overly concerned, even if we went toward recession numbers, because the way they measure a recession is based on a certain a drop for a certain amount of time, or a certain percentage drop. But again, I don't think that the drop is actually a reflection of the companies. It's a reflection of policy. So we'll see how that plays out. It would be great if we can get more level playing field with China and some of these companies that I would say utilize unethical or immoral means of production. Because I truly believe that that's not what a true free market should be based on. Otherwise, the Supreme Court has been pretty busy with all of these Trump orders, deportations, and firings. It's been a mixed, bag in terms of wins and losses for Trump. Supreme Court did order that they return a someone who had been deported sort of without probable cause or without cause that a lower court felt. They deported him after the court had ordered them not to. So that was a Supreme Court action against Trump. But then also they stayed an injunction that was stopping Trump from firing federal employees. Lower court had ordered that he rehire a bunch of the federal employees, and the Supreme Court kind of blocked that. So it's a mixed bag. The Supreme Court also did decide that Trump can continue moving forward with deporting illegal aliens under the Enemy Aliens Act. So gang members, gang affiliates, things like that, who can be identified. He can continue with that. So again, mixed bag there. This is a chaotic time. It's been sort of just fast and loose with executive orders and agency changeover, things like that. A lot of it, sorry, a lot of it though is going to be interesting to see if it ever gets codified. They're in the process of working on sort of the legislative package for the Congress, and we'll see how much of this really makes it into the actual law, right? Because anything executive order does today could be undone tomorrow. So we'll see what ends up happening with Congress, what laws they pass, if they're supportive, if they're not. I think there might be some reluctance by hot seat lawmakers to be so supportive. I know public perception and opinion of a lot of this stuff has generally, depending on the type of issue, has gone down. I know people aren't liking the tariffs, and they're scared they're going to be paying higher taxes. So I don't think a lot of that will be supported by Congress, at least not with the majorities, the slim majorities that they have. We'll see with the deportation and firing and kind of Doge efforts in federal agencies. So we'll see what happens. Not a whole lot else happened this week. Alexander Ovechkin did break Wayne Gretzky's goals record in the NHL. That's one of those records that everybody thought that was untouchable. We continue to see these untouchable records. I got to give it to Ovechkin. I was a Penguins fan, and I didn't like him for a long time, but he's really grown on me. Seems like a good guy. He's done it the right way. He's kind of turned into that gray-haired, older, just kind of classy player. I saw just a couple of days ago he kept his team on the ice to go and line up and shake hands with Marc-Andre Fleury. Last time that they were playing each other, they had got such a big history together when Fleury was with the Penguins. So that's the kind of sports story I like to see. So otherwise, we'll see what the week brings.